Hello and welcome to the Overland Journal podcast. I'm your host, Scott Brady, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Matt Scott. And we're kind of calling this the fall mashup or the Great Scott episode. So we're going to go through all the things that Matt's been up to, that I've been up to, some vehicle evaluations, including the new AEV AT4X GMC. We're going to talk about Matt getting stuck in his EarthRoamer, which is an entertaining conversation. We're going to talk a little bit about my trip in Africa. We're also just going to talk about upcoming trips, other things that are planned in the Overland universe. So enjoy that conversation. And I want to take a little bit more time. This just came in a few minutes ago, and I just want to thank the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum. We've talked about the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum many times on this podcast, but it is one of the most remarkable institutions for not only Toyotas, but for overlanding in the world. My good friend Greg Miller has been instrumental in creating this place for so many of us to gather and celebrate that iconic platform called the Land Cruiser. But it also holds such a special and dear place in my heart because many of the vehicles that Greg and I used on the Expedition 7 trip to go around the world are also stored in the museum, including the Hilux that we used to cross Antarctica, go into the South Pole, and also used to cross the Greenland ice sheet. But my surprise today was actually an award that the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum and the Toyota community just provided to us. And I'm going to show you that here. This is just a very special consideration for me to receive. It is called the Toyota Legends, and they've brought me into that very rarefied air. I'm not so sure that I'm deserving of it when you consider the other people that have been awarded this honor, like Kurt Williams and others. Just a huge amount of gratitude for me to the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum, to the Toyota community for honoring me in this way as a Toyota legend. I have certainly trusted my life to Toyotas throughout the decades, and this is a great honor for me. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, the Land Cruiser Heritage Museum, and thank you to the other Toyota enthusiasts that provided me with this award. This content is brought to you by Overland Journal, our premium quality print publication. The magazine was founded in 2006 with the goal of providing independent equipment and vehicle reviews, along with the most stunning adventures and photography. We care deeply about the countries and cultures we visit and share our experiences freely with our readers. We also have zero advertorial policy and do not accept any advertiser compensation for our reviews. By subscribing to Overland Journal, you're helping to support our employee-owned and veteran-owned publication. Your support also provides resources and funding for content like you are watching or listening to right now. You can subscribe directly on our website at overlandjournal.com. Well, welcome to the podcast. Matt and I are finally back at the podcast desk together.
On the same continent.
That's right. And we were going to call this the Random Show, but we also thought about maybe calling this Great Scott.
Yeah, Great Scott.
From the Back to the Future reference. But It turns out that Great Scott actually, it's an interjection of surprise, amazement, or dismay, which I think covers most of our emotions during a podcast. It's a distinct but inoffensive exclamation, popular in the second half of the 19th century and the early 20th century. And it's now considered dated, like me at least. But it originated as a minced oath, historically associated with two specifics: the Scots, which I think is very appropriate given us, and the Scottish author Sir Walter Scott, and later the U.S. General Winfield Scott, or Winfield Scott. So given that you're Matt Scott and I'm Scott Brady, we're the team of first names. Maybe we call it Great Scott. So maybe the audience can chime in on if our quarterly random shows should just be called Great Scott.
I was thinking maybe our next one would be named after janitorial products because both Scott and Brady make the little urinal doilies.
That's true. Yeah, that's how I know I've achieved greatness.
Yeah,
is that my namesake has been
Look at it every time.
Has been used in urinals around the world. Yeah. That's what I've been hoping to achieve, Matt, for sure.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk through gadgets, trips, cars, maybe some deep thoughts, a couple audience questions, but I really would love to start with some of the stuff that you've been up to recently because I find it so cool. Like Goodwood.
Goodwood. Yeah.
Let's talk about Goodwood.
Goodwood was awesome. I mean, I guess the overarching theme for this year for me has been a return to racing.
Yeah.
I grew up racing. Started the day before my 5th birthday in a quarter midget. Raced until, kind of late teens.
Yeah.
And then got into this overlanding thing. And now I'm returning, and had an opportunity with my good buddy Eli to kind of come over to Goodwood with him. He was racing in the what was it called? Well, it was a series for 2-liter short wheelbase 911s, and
sounds sporty.
Yeah, really cool. We both have them here. He bought one there, and boy, it was just a crazy cool event to be able to experience that, in the pits.
And it's such a race that's steeped in history. When did the first?
I want to say it started after World War II.
Okay.
It's basically built around this grass airfield, the Goodwood Aerodrome, and it's all right-hand turns aside from, well, I guess one when you come through the chicane onto the main straight, and low grip track. It is a period correct track where they run vintage race cars down to the tires.
And does it run rain or shine?
It runs rain or shine.
So fun.
I mean, there were very, very valuable Ferraris out there running in the rain on Sunday, on this track, actually getting at it. I think there's kind of this misconception with the racing at Goodwood that it's more of a leisure cruise. These guys aren't on a leisure cruise. They're wrecking cars. I mean,
once you put a bunch of guys with a bunch of money and a bunch of fast cars on a track, it's going to be a race.
We were trying to figure out the value of the cars that were actively racing here. The bread van, which is a Ferrari 250 GTO that kind of almost looks like a little bit of a station wagon, one of one, is out there wheel to wheel, and it's not, they're sent if they find a little gap, they're going for it, and that car you could ask whatever you want for.
Yeah, because it's one of one.
But
yeah.
The billionaire that already owns it, what else, what can you give him other than that car?
Sure.
Karen Chandok, who's a Formula One racer, ex-Formula One racer, he blew up another 250 GTO. No big deal. That's what they're there for. They're race cars, but. The thing that Goodwood's really known for is the period dress.
I love it.
And you're in this.
Just all the tweed and leather and canvas.
Yeah,
man. It's
yeah.
it does it for me, man.
So the class that Eli was in, that I was kind of hanging out with, they were 60s cars, so I dressed 60s, and I had
you could totally pull that off.
Yeah, I had kind of
with the stash and everything.
Yeah, it was awesome. I had the right hat, and I had this corduroy suit, blue suit with. I actually.
Do we have photos of this, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
we're gonna put it. We'll put
somewhere.
it in the YouTube video.
But it was so hot. It was, mid 80s.
That's hot.
Full sun.
That's hot for there.
Really, really humid in the UK, and they don't have air conditioning really anywhere because it's
Sure.
generally not that hot there.
Sure.
So it was a warm one, so I wasn't really wearing, to be when you're in the pits or kind of the paddock, you're meant to have like a suit and tie on, and I think they really kind of stopped enforcing that this
Yeah.
year because it was a bit.
A little toasty.
A little toasty. So, Goodwood is so cool. You really end up, the word daydream gets thrown around.
Sure.
Because they actually have kind of period actors going around. There was these two women that Eli and I kept kind of running into, and they were, just these chatty 1950s English women, all in period, talking in period.
Wow.
Kind of in your face. but there was so many of these really immersive experiences, and everybody was there for the love of the cars. And
yeah, it's an enthusiast event. It's not just like this highbrow signaling event.
Never in my life did I think that I would see Mr. Bean that much. Rowan Atkinson, legitimate racer. Like we were in the
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we had access.
Mr. Bean getting after it. I love it.
He's a well-known racer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we were in the Rolex Drivers Club because we had driver's credentials, and the people that you would see in there, like I look around and it's like, the Duke of Richmond talking to Jimmy Johnson, NASCAR champion, talking to Jensen Button, and then like we were with Chris Harris from Top Gear. He was Eli's co-driver, so we're hanging out with him all weekend.
Amazing.
And all I can tell you is that a genuine car guy.
Yeah.
He never mentioned Top Gear once the entire weekend. Never, no ego to this guy.
Yeah.
As somebody who grew up watching Top Gear in the kind of the Clarkson era, and then Chris Evans, I guess, took it over.
Sure.
Who was there as well. He was okay, whatever, but it's in solid hands now, and it kind of feels good.
Yeah.
Just a genuine guy.
That's awesome.
So many cool people around, boy, I want to go back. Like I want to go back and race the Chichester Cup. So those are kind of, I particularly like either prototypes or open wheel cars, and that is basically these sub 1100 cc Formula Junior cars that are from early 60s, and those things just the tires are 4 or 5 inches wide, and they're
so
just
good.
sliding around.
So good.
Everything slides around on that track.
Sure.
Brings me back to like sprint car days as a kid.
Yeah.
Except I'm not an ambi turner yet, so, but oh man, if you have a chance to go to Goodwood, go. I think it's about a 1-day event, to be honest. I think 2 days, unless you're racing, is maybe a little much. But if you get the opportunity to hop over, I know that a lot of Americans that listen to this podcast are familiar with the Goodwood Revival. It is just like it is a top-notch event.
Well, so. and for you, and I know it would be for me, it's just such it feels like a bucket list thing to do for an automotive enthusiast, for somebody who loves cars, to be at that place where everybody's taking it so serious yet not so serious. Mm-hmm. Like everybody's in period, everybody's there for the love of the vehicles, so taking it serious but not taking themselves too serious.
In the class that Eli was racing, you had 2 Formula One guys. You had Jensen Button, you had Mark Webber, you had Max Chilton, British touring car. You had all of these professional drivers mixed with the owners of the cars. And
sure.
They kind of had to share seat time, so you had to do a pit stop both in qualifying and in the race. And you're just in this environment, and it's like, where am I?
Oh, what a fun experience, Matt. And it's just something that I have such respect for you for is, there are people in our industry that write about vehicles that take the time to get the training necessary to do so with authority and to do so with perspective, with professional perspective. Like Brian Dorr recently going through the Dirtfish program, the rally program. That's someone who takes testing vehicles seriously enough that he's going to get the training necessary to actually be able to speak with authority about an automobile. And unfortunately, that's just not the case for the vast majority. So I have a lot of respect for you in the fact that you're constantly pushing your love for vehicles while you're also advancing your skills.
Yeah, because I've been doing, I've been kind of involved with the Lucas Oil Racing School this summer.
And isn't your uncle involved somehow?
Yeah, my uncle's one of my instructors.
And doesn't that bring it full circle for you? Because you worked with your uncle when you were 5.
Yeah.
And then now you're back working with your uncle.
The coolest thing was being at Sebring, and I want to say this was in June, to kind of the first step of getting my licensing back and getting into a car, because it is a skill of diminishing reward. Like if you don't use it, it goes away. And the last time that all 3 of us were at Sebring, I was like in my dad's arms in the pits at Sebring, probably at the 12-hour or something. And
amazing.
To be able to recreate that environment and experience, and then I spent a few days at Mid-Ohio and then did a few races at Mid-Ohio, and I'm the old guy, which is weird because I'm 33, and I'm racing against these kids with just immense talent that are trying to get into Indy, and there's a weight disadvantage and a massive skill gap, but to see the dedication again really kind of brings back that passion, and to have my track dad back to be there the entire time is cool. And
Matt, I mean, we think about so many people spend so much energy on things that don't draw them closer to their family.
Yeah.
And for you to be intentional about, I'm going to fly to, I mean, it's the only reason why you would fly to the middle of the United States is to go race cars and spend time with your family. And you're literally like,
you're not going to Lexington, Ohio for the food.
No, but you're spending days with your uncle and days with your dad.
Yep.
And that, I mean, you cannot put a price tag on that.
No.
And the amount of energy that, so, I mean, myself included, I think about the things that bring me the greatest joy are doing things that I love, so experiences with people that I love. Yeah. And all the rest of it is such BS.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get the chance to do that with your uncle that taught you early on, he had an incredible career as a driver instructor and working for all these premium brands.
Yeah, so. I mean, when you look at the people that are on the IndyCar paddock that he's coached and worked with, it's really impressive.
So cool.
So, and then next year, Radical Cup. So it's a support series for IndyCar. That's the goal, to try and by next year get my skills and seat time to the point where I'll be able to jump into the lower levels of that series.
And you have the race car now, don't you?
Bought a Radical. Going to run that next week for the first time. Bought it a month or two ago, but I like to equate Arizona as reverse winter. Our tracks in the desert.
Yeah.
You can't.
You wouldn't dare.
You wouldn't dare run when it's 120 degrees outside.
No way.
So, seat pour next week. First time on track, and see where it goes. It'll be interesting to drive something that has real downforce. So,
what an amazing experience, man! That's so, and I think it's really smart for you to do that as opposed to some of these cars that you have that are so special to expose them to the risks of racing.
Yeah, I mean, well, one, they're not race cars, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like the 993 Turbo that I have. For those of you who don't, it's the last air-cooled turbocharged Porsche that was made. It's I hate to say investment when it comes to cars, but you do have to consider that. I don't have unlimited funds like some of these guys do. That's the thing that you really realize with racing is it is about cubic cash, and you have to put yourself into a place. Like I did Radical because I could do the servicing myself. Like it has a Hayabusa motor, kind of a spec engine, and any series where there's a little bit more of an open rule book means an open checkbook.
Yeah.
And talent doesn't always win.
Yeah, sure.
So, but yeah, you wouldn't want to really convert a 993 Turbo or like my short wheelbase into a
actual race car. Yeah.
Yeah. Even though I might end up doing that to the short wheelbase after Goodwood.
Oh man.
So,
it's such a beautiful car. Jeez, man.
But I think it definitely, like I'm a novice. I don't want to pretend or say that I have some kind of crazy talent, but you notice more things when you're reviewing a car and when you hop into a seat.
Yeah.
That I think that most don't.
Yeah.
I think that unfortunately, it's cool that Brian's taking the time to educate himself on improving the skills, because there's so many riders out there that when you're on the program with them.
Yeah, we've been on the press launches with them. It's terrifying.
And, they can't get the thing into low range, and then they're, you read the story and it's like they're, they all of a sudden became Rod Hall.
Yeah.
They're just.
Yeah, it's a bit disingenuous.
They're crafting a story.
Yeah. Which it's just an encouragement to like take the time to get the training and understand that nobody's perfect, nobody's Mario Andretti, but nobody's Ivan Stewart. It's about the more skills that you get, like Brian has done, where you then have a better insight into how a vehicle performs.
Yeah.
And I have Joe Bacall to thank for that. I mean, Joe was the off-road test driver for Toyota for over a decade. And if you spend months with that guy, you're going to learn some things that really help translate to good evaluation of vehicles.
I think it would be cool for us to do an off-road race.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm hooked.
Especially a vintage one would be really fun.
Yeah, like the Nora would be really cool.
That'd be something I'd be totally into.
You know, I think it's there's some cool things going on with that event.
Yeah,
the
I
rate
really
speed.
like it. I like it. Sinway's had some great luck with it and enjoyed it.
He's running. He'll go down there with the Myers-Manx, and the Myers-Manx guys do it. Buddies of mine, and such great people. And
so that'd be a fun thing to. Let's do it. We just
got to find the car.
Let's just make it happen. Let's just make it happen.
Just got to find the car. So.
Well, that's an awesome update. I mean, what an incredible event to go to, and it ties in. People are thinking maybe like, how does this relate to overlanding? It is exactly what it relates to overlanding, which is you're in a vehicle or you're celebrating vehicles while you're traveling internationally. You know, engaging with the culture of automobiles in the UK. Certainly it's not like a roof tent on a dirt road, but it is all about...
It makes me want the roof tent with the dirt road. It makes me appreciate it that much more, I think. You know, without getting too personal, like we've both been doing this for so long, you longer than me, but like literally my entire adult life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 33 now. I joined Expedition Portal and built my first Land Rover when I was 16.
Yeah.
And it's nice to kind of have a little break and a little perspective maybe.
Yeah.
I definitely noticed myself getting maybe a little jaded on some things with the industry growing and going in this different direction.
Yeah.
And it just tunes the noise out, and you know, you everybody's literally on their own track, and you just focus on your line and you just move forward, and you don't really worry about what everybody else is doing.
That's the key to it, I think, is the comparative.
Yeah.
So don't compare your travels to the next person.
Like the competitive overlanding thing like drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I realize that.
But I think it's the influencer culture. I think everybody's making an attempt to do the stake in the ground to get some followers. But as we've seen, even in the last 6 months, there's been a mass exodus of influencer behavior because they're not making any money.
Yeah.
So, and they never really did. So they kind of maxed out the credit cards, and you can't pay your mortgage with free gear. So I think what we're seeing left, the folks that are left are the people who have been in it long enough or have enough value to offer.
Yeah,
that they've stuck around.
Passion for it. You know, it's camping is an inherently non-competitive activity.
Sure.
Overlanding is a non-competitive activity.
Yeah.
It does feel like sometimes people think it's a race.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a race to see who can go to the most places or tick the most things off the box. It's really about what's inside and what makes you happy. And if you're not happy doing it and it's not fulfilling you, and it doesn't bring you joy, you know, just because it looks good on the internet on your Instagram account doesn't mean you should be doing it.
And that's not real life.
No.
My Instagram account's not real life. There's days that I have really hard days when I'm traveling.
Yeah.
I miss my family, or I had a hell of a border crossing or whatever. And all of those things happen.
Yeah.
And I try to include those in my posts, but you don't end up including enough of the suffering.
People also don't really want to hear too much of the negative.
Yeah.
You know, like I think I probably went a little too negative on my Alaska trip, but it was also just in the moment. Like it sucked.
Yeah, it didn't.
And it sucks to be
fun.
in a box for 45 days during this long heat wave and bugs and all this stuff. I mean, it's part of the challenge, and you kind of have to forget the tough moments, but everybody wants to hear how great it is.
Yeah.
And sometimes
the people are great. That's the thing that's been the universal experience for me in my travels, is that the people are always incredible. Mm-hmm. And that's what made me not want to leave Africa, was just the incredible thoughtfulness, joy, openness of the people of Africa.
I'm just stoked that you're slowing down.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I think so much this has always been work for you and me, and it's like you have a job to do, and you have a timeline, and you have this opportunity. The opportunity that you have is you have this vehicle for a year, and you're like actually taking advantage of that. Like the Scotty I knew 10 years ago would have been in London by now.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You know, now it's like, oh yeah, I'm actually going to turn around because that area was great, and I'm going to go back to it.
Yep.
And I think
it's the first time I've ever been able to do that.
Yeah.
So, and I actually remember the moment. It was, I was in Mozambique in this beautiful place on the beach, and I'm sitting there. Joe wasn't feeling well, and I was just sitting out looking at the waves, and I'm thinking about the schedule and, you know, should we try to push right now to get to London? And I asked myself, what is the rush?
Yeah.
What's the rush?
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment, I decided that I'm going to take 3 times longer.
Yeah.
So
I dig it though.
So yeah, it's just I'm very grateful for that opportunity. You know, I'm just in a place in my life where I can do that. So I'm just really grateful to be able to go at a different pace now. So, and that's not for everybody. There's nothing wrong with going fast if you need to. There's nothing wrong with taking 3 years to do the same trip that's going to take me 1 year. Yeah. Everybody gets their own flavor, and be really careful.
I think you learn time is such a luxury, and the ability to have the money to do something, but also the time to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I think as I get older, I realize that, you know, money doesn't equate to happiness.
No.
The years that I've made, my financially the best years, probably, you know, personally were the worst years. Because there's like a sacrifice of yourself to get that. Like there's always a risk to get the reward. And I don't know, I always go back to, like, I'm so envious of people who have it figured out enough that they can kind of perpetually go.
Yeah.
They're almost like they live life on a different time scale. And that is like, so, like, I'm still young, and I think that is like a goal for me is, you know, at a certain point, you slow down and hop in the EarthRoamer when you come back. I don't know. Yeah. You know, like I see a lot of these younger couples in like the expedition vehicles, and they're just going. They're meandering, you know.
And that is the true definition of wealth. It's being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Yeah.
People attach numbers to it, which there are many people that are rich that are not wealthy, which means that they make a lot of money, they have very little cash, and they're completely committed to continuing to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And which means that they can't go where they want to go, and they can't do what they want to do when they want to do it. But you can tell when someone has kind of cracked the code, which means that they've given up on the things that don't matter, and they're focusing on the things that they love the most. Yeah. And they're able to do it when they want to do it. And that, to me, that is the definition of wealth. And it brings actually to mind a book that I've been reading, which is called 4,000 Weeks. And that's basically the number of weeks that we have on an average lifespan. And when you start to really, it's kind of an anti-productivity book, because there's so many great productivity books that let you kind of hack to get the maximum amount of things done. But if you actually sit down like I did in Mozambique and ask myself, why am I trying to get everything done all at one time, even the things that don't matter or don't even move the ball forward, but just because I feel obligated to do them, then you start to recalibrate. In my mind, I started to recalibrate what were the most important things for me.
Yeah.
And then I started to take each week a little bit more precious. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to just blow through a week.
Yeah.
How many of us are just,
you only get so many of them.
You know, today's Thursday when we're recording this.
Yeah.
Still in my mind, I'm like, I can't wait for this day to be over, because then tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah.
And then I can't wait for Friday to be over, because then that's Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah, the future focus, which is common. It's something that I struggle with too, Matt.
Yeah, and I think
I'm always thinking about what's the next cool thing that I'm going to do, and sometimes it takes me away from the amazing opportunity that I have in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to be a little more present.
Yeah.
Which is really hard for me.
You know, I do want to put the caveat that, you know, there's this realities for people's lives, you know.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people just don't, like, time is that super big luxury. And, I don't want to be conceited by saying like, oh, well, just take off and travel. That's not reality for everybody, but I do think that it's doable. I really do. I think that when you're traveling, I mean, you've been doing a lot more international stuff than I have, but you come across people and, they're traveling on, they're traveling on what the interest on a modern car loan, average car loan is every day.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was just, they took the dedication. They knew what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
They lived very frugally. They lived with their parents. They lived in a studio, whatever it is, to be able to do that. And I think like when you get out of the rat race, you get out of the U.S., because the U.S. has become really expensive. I mean, the U.S. and Europe now are, like, again, just being in London a couple days ago, it's
when you spend $22 on a G&T, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you go to Mexico, or you go to Africa, or you go to wherever, whatever that first jumping off point is, life goes further.
I was in Malawi looking over the lake, eating fresh fish and vegetables that had been locally grown, these carrots that were like this super bright orange, amazing, locally grown potatoes and a G&T, and my bill was $6.50.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of perspective, and it's also a matter of choice. And I think that if we all take some personal responsibility about we could choose to do something different, there may be big consequences to that choice. But it's about taking ownership of that. I can make a choice. It's like the Japanese Zen Buddhist monk that the Bells came across in Africa. He travels with no money, and he's traveling around the world. He's gone around the world with no money. He does not keep money on him. He uses it momentarily if it's given to him to feed himself.
Yeah.
And then he travels around the world with no money. Or the Russian hitchhiker that I came across in Central Asia, and she left all of the stands.
Yeah.
With $5.
Yeah.
And she teaches English. She stops and works for a while, and so it's always a choice. And there's something really empowering about saying that I'm choosing to not do that, but I could if I wanted to, and that kind of takes away some of that feeling of being trapped.
And it's interesting, the first thing that went into my head is I'm like, oh, yeah, but you need a 401k, and you need an IRA, and you need this, and you need that, and all these things for modern life. But then I started going back, and I'm like, okay, when I was young and I was like really traveling, and the people that I met that were putting it all out there to travel, how many of them run their own companies now, are like wildly successful? Like remember the taxi guys?
Yeah.
Like one's a best-selling author, two of them own successful tech startup companies. One of them's a, commercial helicopter pilot that just, left everything behind to drive around the world in a Grenadier again, Matt Pryor.
Yep.
Like the world works itself out.
It's
almost like there's this education of travel, and there's this almost like risk and tolerance level, to kind of go back to what I said earlier, is there's always risk to have the reward.
Yeah.
And you learn how to manage the risk, and you get comfortable with risk.
And you just get more competent.
And
because you're dealing with new people all the time, new challenges all the time. You just get more effective.
Yeah.
Let's talk about gadgets. Let's talk about gadgets.
Ooh.
Let's talk about
gadgets.
Is there anything new that you've been using that you're kind of digging on?
I'm thinking gadget.
It looks like you moved. It looks like you moved from the Apple Watch to the Garmin watch.
I
did
hated
the same.
the Apple Watch.
Yeah, it didn't work for me.
It was just too intrusive in my life.
Yeah, and you have to charge it constantly.
I charge this thing like once
a month.
Every once in a while.
Like
I dig it.
Yeah, I've got 22 days left.
Yeah. So I dig this. I get my step goals and all that kind of stuff to make sure I'm moving.
I like it for the sleep because of the travel. It really helps me calibrate.
Yeah.
Like if what time should I be eating? Should I not have a drink a little bit later in the evening? Because I find that my life improves significantly when my sleep improves significantly. So I use it primarily for sleep.
Okay, so it's a big gadget, and I'm gonna lump it into the same way that a really nice dishwasher or something would
Okay.
improve your life, is it's the Tesla I just bought.
That is a big gadget,
So
but it is totally a gadget.
it's totally a gadget. I bought a Model Y Performance, and
I like the Model Y the best. I think it looks the best from my perspective.
It is the decision that you kind of told me it's the decision I made that freed up so many decisions.
Yeah.
I don't have to unlock the car. I don't have to find my keys in the morning. I don't have to turn on the radio station. I don't have to turn on climate. Like, all of this stuff just happens.
Yep.
Like, you just get in the car and it's transport. I plug it in when I get home. It charges overnight. It costs me about anywhere from $1.50 to $2.50 a day in electricity, so less than a gallon of gas. It has this pet mode, dog mode.
Because it's all about DAC.
It's all about the Greyhound.
It's the DAC mobile.
And please consider adopting or rescuing a Greyhound. So it has this big screen. It actually comes up. My driver will be right back. It's 66 degrees in here, and the air conditioning is on. And it has a little camera, and it streams what's going on inside of the car to my phone. And it's just such a genuinely useful thing. That
was a tough transition from you, going from a Mercedes, what was it, 60
AMG 63S Estate or wagon, which may be one of the best internal combustion, daily driving, practical, fast cars ever made. And it feels like it is a horse and buggy compared to the Tesla. Like, I'm just being really honest. And because I see so much hate about these things, and I realized that Tesla doesn't do press programs. So
true.
Yeah, so you get
So
all
they
of
don't
these
get the
journalists
boondoggle.
that hate them. And I know we've talked about this before, but the reality of most automotive writers that you're reading stuff, they're being flown business or first class to Europe,
right,
picked up in a luxury car to take them to their hotel where they can put whatever they want in the room. They're wine and dine at the best places, they're in beautiful locales, and there's these people are on the road 24/7 living like this millionaire, billionaire lifestyle, and everybody but Tesla does that.
Yeah.
If I kind of I kept my wagon because I'm like maybe this isn't going to be for me, but I have I have the power walls and the solar, so I'm closed loop for my energy now, because
Arizona has a lot of sun,
and the climate's doing funky things right now.
Yeah,
and we probably should make some changes, especially with my lifestyle. Anyway, I thought it was going to be bad because you just hear all these bad things. It has fewer rattles than my new MG wagon did. It's faster. It has nice materials inside. Like, everything that
I love the interior.
Yeah, everything that people say about them. It's just honest. It's interesting to me because I keep thinking, I'm like, and it's one of the best-selling cars in the world right now.
I think it's the best-selling sedan in the world.
Yeah, they're just
premium
generally
sedan.
good.
Yeah.
I think looking at all of the other manufacturers' EVs, they're just way far behind. They don't have the charging infrastructure. They're just, the Tesla has a trunk in the back and a trunk in the front, and it has all this space. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. And
it's really handsome too. I love that color.
It really just makes me question a lot of what I read now.
Yeah.
Because you then think why is everybody saying that this is so bad? And and it just makes you think that everybody else in the automotive industry, let's talk from a manufacturer level, is so insecure that at all of these events, they're downloading all of this hate for this car company that's one of the most American-made cars you can buy. It's one of the most innovative car companies in the world, and happens to be American. It's in my case, it's powered by renewable energy.
Yeah.
Is renewable the way to say it?
Solar. I don't know. You take in the sun and you convert it to miles in your Tesla.
The oil well on my roof
Yeah.
charges that. And you just start to think of all these special interests that are, their livelihood depends on this type of vehicle not being successful.
Sure.
And you kind of start to
And you're not saving the world with an electric vehicle.
No.
I think that's really important to note, but you are improving the quality of your life significantly without really any more impact to the planet than buying another new car that's internal combustion.
Yeah.
Like you save time. There's
so much misinformation. Yeah. And, like when I see journalists write about it and then I see them on, Russia Times as the reporter, and then I see them at, some, BP event. I'm like, oh, this is all starting to make sense.
Gotcha.
So that was an interesting eye-opener and maybe a little deep for gadgets.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about the polar opposite of my other new car, which is the 7.3 Super Duty. So came from Bruce Dorn, who's been on the podcast, a good mutual friend of ours. Original owner 7.3 F-250.
Such a great
California and Arizona car. Been with him his entire life. And I'm doing this period correct build on it. And I'm really excited by it because this was, when I was going to the racetrack as a kid, this was the car that I was in. It was an excursion, but, same interior, like the front door has this little dip for the mirror.
Sure.
And I remember as a kid putting my feet in that. I mean, now like my knee wouldn't fit in there.
Right.
But it's just so like sentimental, and it's kind of, I guess it fits into that kind of, in the collector car world, it would be of the era of the young timer, is what they call them.
Yeah, but it's legendary engine.
It just works. So that will be an interesting project to kind of see unfold. I'm putting 2016 axles underneath it.
I saw them out back in the crates.
As factory as can be, front coil suspension, so it won't turn like the Exxon Valdez, and going to go through some power upgrades. Banks makes a carb compliant kit that is about 100 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. Has all the EO numbers, which is important to me. I like clean air.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's cool to breathe.
Yeah.
Controversial.
It's just being a good human being.
But yeah, taking out all the, it had some wiring funk going on with it. It was like 2 remote start systems, and Bobby at Red or Dead Fabrication in town has been really going through it and kind of restoring this car. Because I'll tell you, I tried to buy a new F-250. 1, you can't. 2, they're like $100,000 for like a well-equipped Lariat. Like I'm not talking King Ranch Platinum or Limited that goes on top of that. And then you're doing that at 8-9% on a car loan.
Yep.
And they can't make enough of them because you literally can't still buy one.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what? No.
Good choice.
I'm just going to buy an
This
old
thing will
truck
last
and make it last.
You needed a pickup.
I needed a pickup. I don't really want to drive a pickup truck every day.
Well, and not only that, but it's like it's still going to be a pickup, even if you put a really nice interior in it. So
yeah, it's got Scheelmans in it from Bruce.
Yeah, exactly.
I put a new ARB bumper on it. I was able to buy all the trims and things. And
awesome. No, it looks so good.
And it's a Ford, so like the parts are super cheap.
Yeah, and it's just like a legit Overland vehicle. You can do whatever you want with it.
So that's the plan, is just kind of take the principle of how somebody would build a Land Cruiser, like a 70 series, and recognize that this is our 70 series
it's as
with
close
the
as
Halo
we got.
motor,
Yeah,
and have some fun with it and take it on some cool trips.
It'll run any diesel anywhere in the world.
I think it'll be a cool Baja truck. It'll tow the race trailer. What about you, gadgets? You were in that 4xe for a while.
I really liked the 4xe. I'm a huge fan of that whole configuration for a lot of reasons, without getting too technical on it. But where we live in Prescott, the vast majority of the driving that I do can be accomplished in less than 20 miles round trip. So the 4xe is the perfect kind of setup for me, because I can go all electric when I'm in town. But then if you want to go do a road trip, or you want to drive to Mexico or wherever, you can just add fuel and you just keep rolling. So there's a lot that I like about the 4xe. I think it's my favorite electrified vehicle. Now, I haven't spent time in a Tesla yet, but I have a lot of respect for it.
It's like driving a golf cart.
I really like the Rivian a lot. But I found that, like in my personal use case, I cannot get from my office to my little sailboat in the slip in Roosevelt and back on one charge. And there's not good charging infrastructure along the way. So it just doesn't work for me. Whereas a 4xe, I leave with a full charge. I get 28, 29 miles of the gallon if you leave with a full charge. And I can go anywhere I want to go. So for me, it really works. So I like the 4xe. I also spent some time in the GMC AT4X AEV edition.
Ooh, yeah, that's nice.
Which it's such a tidy half-ton pickup like package. I would say it's the best half-ton pickup package out there, period.
Yeah.
With one caveat is that I think, if I remember correctly, the payload was 1,030 pounds or maybe 1,050 pounds. So when we use a pickup truck, so let's take example, like the two of us. So the two of us together we're pushing 500 pounds between the two of us, call it 450, whatever you want to call it. And then you and I want to take two motorcycles. We can't do that. We cannot take two motorcycles and two buddies with the payload that's available in that truck. So one of the things that I would love to see is, as these, I call them like an ultra overlander, where they're really mindful of performance and accessories and packaging, they still have to be mindful of the payload of the vehicle. So a half-ton truck needs to be able to have 1,400 to 1,700 pounds minimum of payload.
Half ton.
Yeah.
1,000 pounds.
I know. But that's no, it's true. It's just never been literal.
Yeah.
It's never been literal.
Yeah.
So.
It is interesting because I think that's when we were checking the door tag on that.
That's right.
And then didn't we go check the door tag on my AMG wagon, and it was the same, or the wagon was slightly more.
It was
within a little bit.
It's very,
which is shocking.
It's shocking. And so here's another perfect example. They have really good tow ratings. These half-ton trucks can tow 10, 11, 12,000 pounds, no problem. And they tow that kind of weight really well. But the majority of these trailers that you're going to use, especially like an Overland trailer, they have 3, 4, 5, 600 pounds of tongue weight on them. They say that they shouldn't have more than 500, but once people load all their stuff in there, you end up with about a 500-pound tongue weight. So if you put 500 pounds on the trailer hitch, you've now taken 500 pounds out of your payload. It doesn't go against gross combined vehicle weight rating. It goes against payload because it is resting on the suspension of the vehicle.
In the worst
place. A ton of leverage, really far back. So again, like if you've got a family of 4 and you want to tow a big trailer, you cannot do that. So incredible vehicle. I'm super impressed by the performance, front and rear lockers. It's going to have the diesel. It's literally.
Yeah, because the one you tested, the one we had here had the 6-liter.
It did.
I feel like we really quickly went from like, yeah, I want that old school V8 to like, wow, that feels like somebody flipped the switch and it just feels kind of outdated.
It does.
You drive that versus, let's say, the EcoBoost that's in the F-150 or Raptor, and you realize, ooh, turbos, torque.
Yes.
And that's what you really want on the street.
Or you just want the diesel, and it has a 3-liter turbo diesel available. That's the same one that I have in the AT4 that I've got, and it's great.
Yeah.
Like that motor is great, and it's now going to be available with the diesel. So I would just love to see the manufacturers mindful of payload. It's just really easy to get, like even that Wrangler 4xe that I was driving, it had an 830-pound payload. So now that's a little bit more appropriate in a wagon, but again, like if you wanted to tow a small trailer, or if you want to put a couple, put your family in there, you're going to be at payload.
My
without any gear.
XL was 1,600 pounds.
Yeah, which that's okay because it's got a ton of accessories on it.
I could have done the 3,500, and then I would have had 8 squillion 5.
There's a bunch of options with the full size trucks, like the heavy duty full size. Yeah. So that was, but I really like it. It's a great truck with a diesel. It's going to be a total winner. Driven a lot of other vehicles. I just spent some time in the North America spec Grenadier. I was really impressed to see a
Talk to me about that.
2 kilowatt inverter with outlets in the center console and in the back. So there's a lot of power available in it. It's definitely a more refined vehicle than the one that I've been driving, which was early prototype production. So they're paying attention. I have a lot of time in the Grenadier, and I don't want to overemphasize the model because I've grown affection towards it.
Yeah.
Because I'm traveling in it, so I have a strong
There's a
bond.
connection,
Yeah, strong bond with the vehicle now. But it looks like that they're really paying attention to fit, finish, noise, vibration, harshness, addressing things, so that way when these vehicles get to North America, that they're ready to go. But it was cool to see them continuing to put energy towards making the vehicle great.
Constant improvement.
Yeah, constant improvement.
Yeah.
Other gadgets, I am finding that I'm trying to, like you did with the Tesla, I'm trying to find things that in one decision removes 1,000 decisions or creates space in my life. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my phone. So you are on YouTube. This is now my wallet. And my wallet not only contains things like my driver's license and a couple credit cards, but it also even has a phone in there. So believe it or not, this is a phone. It's called a light phone. They didn't send it to me. I bought it. It is a dumb phone.
Yeah.
So it works with my level of intellect. It's as simple as it gets. But the cool thing about it is it's an organic LED screen. It basically makes phone calls, and it sends text messages with some degree of effort, so you don't find yourself really trying to text or anything like that. You can see it's just a very simple screen. There's no color. It will also play music.
Kind of looks like a Kindle screen. In
Yeah,
a way, right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's and it is a little bit backlit, so it works at night. But during the daytime, when there's a sufficient light, it's not backlit. It's a phone. It's got an alarm. It's got a calculator. It's got a clever calendar function that I can pair with my Google Calendar, so it gives me push notifications, which is something that's fairly important. It works as a hotspot, and then it also allows me to have podcasts on there, do a couple notes, those kinds of things. So I use this phone when I'm back in the United States, and I love it because it took me about a week to get over the neuroses of constantly checking my phone.
Yeah.
And I had already taken all social media off my phone, but I found myself still this compulsion to I don't know, check my bank balance or go on to CNN or what. I just found a new version of obsessing over this stupid phone. So I decided that I was going to take a break, a digital detox, and I'm going to use this thing. Now, it's really important to note this is not a solution for travel. It does not work well internationally. I can't have boarding passes on there. It does have a way to do directions, but it won't work internationally. You can't have Gaia. You can't have there's things that I can't do. The messaging through the Garmin InReach.
Your bubbles went from blue to green.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. So while I'm in the U.S., I'm going to keep using this thing, and I love it. It's kind of like a big middle finger to all of the time that I've lost with tech devices. So.
I think, 5-10 years ago when he traveled, I wonder how much of it, the enjoyment for me was actually the disconnection.
Yeah.
But now your phone just works everywhere.
It works everywhere.
And you have internet everywhere, and you are constantly connected.
Yep.
I find that with the Starlink now.
Yeah.
We were out and we should talk about my big stuck in the EarthRoamer.
Well, let's talk about the Starlink stuff first, because I have a little update on Starlink too. But.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So we have the in-motion Starlink, and it works, really great. We leave it on when we go down the road. It's really good with the RV plan, so if we want to, we can turn it on and off by the month, which is handy, keeps expenses down when you're traveling. But I hardwired everything in. The dish is there. You don't know that there's Starlink on the vehicle, other than you can kind of see the dish at the back. And I have it on a nondescript switch, and I've noticed that when I first got it, it was always on, and you never disconnect. We found this lovely camps. Oh, actually, no, I can't talk about that.
It was a terrible campsite.
We were at this terrible campsite in this terrible place, and I kind of had, you know, this epiphany where I'm like, oh, I don't have to use this, and you constantly make yourself available, and now the Starlink is making yourself available in places where you shouldn't be available.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to leave it off, and Laura will be on the Starlink, and we've now kind of have this thing where we'll be like, okay, in the morning, you know, we have our coffee, we do everything, we go for a walk. Okay, we're going to turn the Starlink on. Press the button, 5 or so minutes, it's on. We leave it on for a little bit, and we give ourselves like 30-minute blocks of it, and then we turn it off.
Smart. That's
and
super smart.
You notice, it's so fun. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, just having all the power with the button. But we go from low stress, you know, like talking to each other, looking at each other. The moment you press that button, you're just back on your phone.
Yeah. And then you're sending each other memes.
Yeah. And
while you're sitting in the EarthRoamer.
Yes. You're like, you're you know, it's Greyhound memes for us. And there's a million Greyhound memes going back and forth. But you have to make the time to disconnect. I think that's such a huge part of why we all do this, is to be one with nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I buried the EarthRoamer to the frame. I was trying to find this campsite in eastern Arizona, which is an area that I had not been to, and my mind was Arizona. Doesn't really rain that much. There's not that much organic matter in the soil. Generally stable, like things are very stable. I didn't air down, which was my first mistake, but I learned a lot from this anyways. Driving, boop, truck goes down, doesn't move. I had missed a turn. I was trying to get to this. There was like this dam that was put in like a year or two ago to keep fish from going, not invasive species from going further up. Found it on satellite. One of those places, like we just spent these like beautiful 2-3 days in this idyllic campsite where there's wild hops growing in our campsite in Arizona.
Wow.
And tried to find this other campsite because we're just so stoked on this area that no one goes to. It's terrible, don't go. But it was the first time that I had been really stuck in the EarthRoamer. I had been close. I had been, you know, in situations where I had to throw a set of max tracks out in sand or something like that. But this was, you know,
this was 18,000 pounds of stuck.
18,000 pounds of stuck, and and it's interesting when you have a winch and max tracks and recovery gear in a 4-wheel drive, you're recovering. Most overland trucks are between 6,000 and 10,000 pounds, but they also have the ability to gain that momentum much quicker. They don't sink as much. It was stressful.
Yeah.
It was because where we were, I mean, luckily we had Starlink and communication, and we would have been fine. But you know, it starts raining.
Yeah.
And it's muddy, and I don't have that much experience in mud, to be honest.
Yeah.
I've lived in Arizona my entire adult life. We don't really have it.
Not really.
Right. And this was a non-improved road. Blew my rear winch. Some of the mistakes I recognize that I made is I was just going on Forest Service roads. I was going to a relatively established campsite. I'm trying to travel with less. I didn't take my recovery kit with me.
Oh, exciting.
I always have 8 max tracks on the back. I lost 4 of them. I didn't have a snatch block to go backwards. It had an undersized winch on the back. It was kind of retrofitted. It had a Warren 9.5 XP, which is a great winch.
But that demands several pulley blocks.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to work with what you have. And the thing that I realized with these big expedition trucks is you can have all the recovery experience in the world. You can have what I believe to be good driving talent in myself. I'm smart-ish. And that truck's going to it's going to go where it's going to go. You know, I kept finding these like boulders underneath the surface. Like, I mean, you're sinking down a 42-inch tire, and there might be a big rock in front of you, and you're just not going to move. And it was stressful. It was a big learning experience.
How did you get out? Going forward?
I had to go, and my initial thing was, I've just driven down a road. You know, basically it was kind of, I'm going to call it gravel reinforced. And then about 100 feet after that, you know, I had missed what was meant to be the turn that they had kind of backfilled, and you couldn't tell that there was a turn there. So I'm like, okay, it's uphill. Moving forward, I've already sunk. I need to go backwards. What can I do? Like I have a tree strap, and I've got this. Well, the truck kind of moved over, and that's where I ran into that boulder in the back. So rear winch went. I couldn't go anywhere, so I had to go forward. So I kind of had to, like, you know, you almost have to make these, and it's damaging to the environment. You have to like almost make these tracks, to free that kind of stiction, so I could get forward. So I'd winch forward with the vehicle, just, you know, kind of first gear, not driving the winch, but trying to create these, you know, a little runway for myself.
Yeah, sure.
In essence, and then I knew that I could get back. And I was able to get forward, but then I had to get the truck turned around. And that is where things got challenging, because I had to winch the front of the truck over, you know, predictively get it stuck.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I know that I'm going to get stuck the moment I go off. There was no place to turn the vehicle around.
Sure.
You know, you have what's the wheelbase on an EarthRoamer?
8,000 feet. Yeah.
8,000 feet. So you're trying to get this kind of moved around. You're trying to make it work. And you just have to realize, like, okay, like, I'm going to get stuck, but where do I want to get stuck so I can move that front end 4 feet this way and then do the same thing?
Sure.
You know, it was interesting, and it's my second big recovery when we were traveling, and my second one where I should have listened to Laura.
You talked about the one in Australia.
Yeah. So again, some lessons is that you have to work as a team on these things.
Yeah.
Just because that person's sitting right seat doesn't mean that they're actually probably not the one that's paying more attention.
Yeah.
You know, you're trying to drive this 18,000 pound vehicle off road or on the road. You know, you're only looking, you know, your eyes are looking most of the time.
Tunnel vision, sure.
You get tunnel vision, you're only looking, you know, a couple 100 feet ahead, where maybe the person that's right seat is actually paying attention to the environment more. First thing, you shouldn't go through there. You shouldn't go through there. Don't do it. Don't do it. And then I got us stuck. So this is my public apology to my wife. And my recommendation to listen to the person that's in your right seat.
Yeah, especially someone as smart and as experienced as a traveler as Laura.
And when the spidey senses start going off as a driver, slow the vehicle down.
Yeah.
That's what I should have done. I knew that it was going to be challenging, but you get in the Roamer and you're like, I'm in a pickup truck.
Yeah.
Because that's what you visually see.
Sure.
And you like forget, no.
It's a really heavy pickup truck.
I'm not really in a pickup truck. It just kind of looks like one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was fascinating. You know, we did our best to, you know, public land, you know, we did our best to kind of, you know, fill things back in.
Sure.
Sucks, you know, sometimes those things just
well, you
happen.
didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah, and it wasn't intentional. There are there's 4 buried MaxTrax Extremes that are, you know, I'm supposed to be that guy. I'm the MaxTrax guy. I'm supposed to be using the leashes, and they were just, you know, buried.
Yeah.
You know, it was like the chocolate cake mud.
Totally. They were gone.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to go try and find $1,000 with MaxTrax, I'll give you the pin. And but, you know, glad that I was able to get out, because getting out of the first one felt like a win, and then, you know, there's 5 more of these recoveries where you just got to drag that front end over.
Yeah.
Because you have twice as much weight on the rear as you do the front.
Sure.
In an expedition truck like that.
Sure.
So.
What a fun experience, though. Now, in hindsight, you learned some things.
Yeah. Yeah, don't go down muddy roads in a really heavy truck in an environment that you don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have some Starlink news. So I worked with the company Unique Componentry. They're actually longtime subscribers to the magazine, followers of Expedition Portal. He's an engineer, and he figured out how to create a 12-volt only 1.9 inch tall Starlink package. So I sent my Starlink to him because I'm planning on bringing it with me to Africa because I really had some challenges. I don't have to work quite as much as I have to work when I'm in Arizona, but I still have work that I have to get done. It's what allows me to travel. So it was impossible to do some of the things that I needed to do with the internet connections that I could get. So I'm going to bring the Starlink with me to do that kind of work. And it magnets to the top of the Grenadier with these magnetic feet. It's super low profile. It won't be obvious even to, anybody that looks at the car that there's a satellite antenna on there.
Yeah.
And then the big advantage is it converts it from 120 volt to 12 volt. So it drops the power usage by about 30 or 40%.
And then how does that work for your router, though?
It's all integrated.
Oh, so it has its own little Wi-Fi router in it.
Yes.
That's big.
They take the router and they take the antenna and they make them into one. And they remove the post and they remove all of the motor drive units that are in there, so it actually makes it lighter. And they machine the back of the antenna plastic panel off, and then they integrate the router, and then they pot and seal the entire antenna, so it's vibration resistant, weather resistant in ways that it wasn't before.
Yeah.
And then it has 4 integrated mounting points, mounting nuts integrated into a captive nut integrated into the potting. And then you can run either a magnetic foot or a sticky foot, or you can mount from the bottom up through it. So and it comes with a cool little nylon case. So I'm just going to carry it on the airplane.
Huh.
So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah,
That's something I'm super excited about.
The in motion. Basically that gives you.
It does.
I know that you're not meant to use them in motion, and sometimes they'll work or whatever, but the ability to take it off and reposition it. Like we've been in campsites where, we don't choose our campsites based on Starlink.
Sure.
If it doesn't work, hey, whatever. Yeah. But, you kind of have to have that northern view.
Yes.
And if you can't get the northern view, that's where I'm actually not really a fan of the in-motion and the full mounted solution. Like, if I would have had a different antenna and I would have been able to set it, let's say 20 feet over here facing that way, you could have actually gotten internet. Yep. So this is a really interesting solution.
It's very clever, too, because you can actually... It comes with a 12-volt cigarette lighter socket, which is never the best connection anyways, but it comes with that. But you can unscrew the 12-volt cigarette lighter portion, and it becomes one of those like Dometic fridge.
Or like the Hella
2-pin
plug or whatever.
Well, it's a little bit even more advanced than that.
Okay.
It's a 2-pin that has polarity orientation, and then it's also got a screw-on cap. So like if you have a Dometic power supply, or there's other power supplies that use that same connection, you can just take your little Goal Zero or Dometic or whatever and the antenna and carry it out into a spot where you have coverage. You just lay the antenna on the ground pointing up and you're done. You can run it off of that little power pack from anywhere.
What's that conversion cost?
I think it's about $1,000.
Okay. Yeah, so it's not cheap,
but it's a low volume, the guy's he's like pursuing his dreams. I'm like super proud of him.
Yeah.
For having something like this.
That's still cheaper than it would cost to get the high performance dish.
That's correct.
To install that.
And you end up with the smallest possible Starlink setup.
Yeah.
So it's carry-on sized that you can take anywhere in the world. You have to just get the global data plan. So.
Yeah, because what does that draw at 12 volt?
I think I would be surprised if it's more than 2 amps.
Wow.
So it's a lot better than. Because otherwise you're having to go through an inverter, which you have parasitic loss in that conversion, and and then there's also all the motors and it reorienting and all those other things. So the power consumption goes down.
We figure anywhere between 10 and 12 amps.
Yeah.
For the Starlink.
I would see because I did some testing, I saw on average 5.7 with my Starlink before I got it converted. You have a different unit than I do.
Yeah.
So, but I saw 5.7 on average amps, and it should be down to that 2 amp range because you're now going straight
now you
to
can
12
actually
volts.
now you can actually run that on a typical Overland truck.
Totally.
It was before we converted the EarthRoamer to lithium. It was the in motion was actually kind of a strain on those. Like I'm thinking like, oh well, I'll leave it on overnight. And you don't realize like it actually it's a constant draw.
It is a constant draw,
and it really brings that voltage down. So
yeah, so it's really really cool.
And
setup.
What's the name of that again?
It's called Unique Componentry.
Okay,
and
cool.
it's a Starlink conversion. Yeah, he's just a super bright engineer that decided to make a cool product, and he builds every single one of them himself. And
I dig that.
Yeah, it's a very cool, very thoughtful thing. So there'll be a full review on that coming out when we get a chance to really test it, crossing Africa. So
yeah.
I think that covers everything that we really wanted.
Our random catch-up podcast.
Yes, that's right. And well, Matt, it's great to see you. I'm so glad that we got a chance to sit down. I'm only around for another couple weeks before I head back to Africa. The Grenadier is currently being stored in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. So for any of our listeners that are in Tanzania, go check out CMC Automotive right there downtown in Dar es Salaam. It's in the showroom. It's like the display model.
Is that off of Barack Obama Drive?
It's very close to Barack Obama Drive. Yes, it is. It's actually very close to there.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool dealership, cool people, and they were just super gracious to let me store the vehicle there for free and in a safe place. And really loved Tanzania, really loved Malawi. So make sure those that are traveling to Africa, keep that on your list. But I'm excited to go back.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm excited for you. I got
thanks, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, we need to talk about getting you over to Morocco. So.
Dang race cars.
Well, and thanks, Matt, for being on the podcast again today and chatting with us. Our Great Scott
episode.
And we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.